Welcome back to my channel. In the previous video, we discussed statement and expression. In today's video, we will cover the next two important topics, the importance of reading ambiguity and the 10 difficulties involved in interpreting poetry. So let's get started with the first topic, which is importance of studying ambiguity. Richards explains ambiguity as a situation where a word, phrase, or statement has more than one possible meaning. Because poetry often uses figurative language, when readers interpret poems, they often reach different conclusions. This happens because poetry contains complex meanings. Richard states that different opinions about the same poem are not necessarily a problem. Instead, they can help us improve our interpretation techniques. Richards admits that ambiguity may initially create confusion because readers are unsure which meaning is correct. However, he argues that ambiguity is not a weakness of poetry, instead, it enriches meaning, allows deeper interpretation, and encourages discussion among readers. Thus, ambiguity becomes a source of intellectual exploration. Richards believes that language is systematic, where words are connected to each other in complex ways. He compares this system to a building where each part may look separate, but together they form a meaningful structure. Similarly, in poetry, different meanings interact, can be organized, and resolves the conflicts between interpretation. Richard compares ambiguity to different perspectives. Just as a painting may look different from different angles, a poem may reveal different meanings depending on the reader's viewpoint. Studying these perspectives helps critics understand how interpretation arise and why readers disagree. Another important idea is that poetry is a form of communication. The writer tries to communicate an experience or emotion to the reader. The reader must interpret the meaning and resolve ambiguities because poetic language is complex and symbolic. Only after this process, the readers can fully understand the experience conveyed by the poem. The Richard argues that psychology is an important tool for understanding ambiguity. Psychology helps critics understand how readers respond to poetry and how meaning is produced in the mind. Some psychologists may criticize practical criticism because it does not fully investigate the author's personal motives. Richard believes that instead of exploring the deep unconscious mind of the author, readers must focus on the language of the poem and the experience created by the poem. Criticism should analyze what is present in the text, not speculate about the writer's hidden psychology. Richard argues that criticism should clarify meaning and judge value. The critics must first understand what experience the poem communicates. After understanding the meaning, the critic can decide how valuable or successful the poem is. But if the critic does not clearly understand the poem, evaluation becomes meaningless. So, clear interpretation must come before judgment. Richard warns that critical principles can sometimes cause confusion. For example, critics often use general principles about literature, such as the idea from Aristotle that poetry is imitation of life. But if such principles are applied carelessly, they may lead to misunderstanding of poems, incorrect judgment, and oversimplified criticism. Thus, principles must be carefully and thoughtfully used in the interpretation of the poems. Richard explains that many critics misapply theoretical principles. This happens when critics blindly follow literary rules, ignore the specific details of the poem. Good critics, on the other hand, use principles wisely and flexibly. A critic must carefully interpret the poem, clarify ambiguous meanings, and understand the experience communicated and apply critical principle intelligently. Because of these challenges, effective literary criticism requires training and careful thinking. Our next topic is the 10 difficulties. Remember, we discussed the Cambridge experiment by I.A. Richards, where Richards gave poems without author's name to the students for interpretation. The 10 difficulties identified by Richard in practical criticism refers to the common problems readers face while interpreting the poetry. We will discuss one by one. The first one is making out the plain sense of poetry. According to Richards, the first difficulty in reading poetry is difficulty of sense, which refers to the understanding of literal meaning of the poem. Readers often fail due to unfamiliar vocabulary, complex sentences structure, and figurative language. To overcome this difficulty is important because plain sense is the foundation of interpretation. Without grasping the basic meaning, deeper interpretation of tone, feeling, and motives become impossible. The second difficulty is sensuous apprehension. According to Richards, sensuous apprehension refers to the reader's ability to perceive the sensory and musical qualities of poetry, such as imagery, sound, and rhythm. Many readers fail to experience these aspects and focus only on literal meaning, which leads to incomplete understanding. Richard emphasizes that poetry must be felt through the senses as well as understood intellectually, and the lack of sensuous apprehension reduces the aesthetics and emotional impact of the poem. The next difficulty is imagery, principally visual imagery in poetic reading. Imagery refers to the use of language that creates mental pictures or sensory impression in the reader's mind. Many readers fail to visualize image properly or form vague and incorrect impressions, which leads to misunderstanding. Since poetry often communicates through images rather than the direct statements, to ability to perceive imagery is essential for correct interpretation and appreciation of poetry. The next difficulty is mnemonic irrelevance. Mnemonic irrelevance means when a reader's personal memories or association interfere with the understanding of the poem, even though they are not relevant to it. These memories are often unrelated to the poem and can distort its meaning. Richard believes that readers should avoid relying on private associations and instead focus on the text itself to achieve accurate and objective interpretations. Fifth difficulty is stock responses. According to Richard, responses are habitual and pre existing beliefs that readers bring to the poem without proper analysis. These responses are influenced by social and cultural conditioning and prevent readers from engaging critically with the text. Richard argues that stock responses leads to superficial and distorted interpretations, and readers must avoid them to achieve a deeper understanding of poetry. Sixth difficulty is sentimentality. Sentimentality refers to an excessive and exaggerated emotional response to poetry. According to Richards, readers often project their own feelings onto the poem and react more strongly than the text justifies. This leads to distorted interpretations and the loss of critical judgments. Richard believes that readers should maintain emotional control and respond only to the emotion genuinely present in the poems. Our seventh difficulty is inhibition. According to Richards, inhibition refers to the suppression or blocking of emotional response while reading poetry. Richard may feel uncomfortable with certain themes or avoid emotional engagement, resulting in incomplete understanding. Historically, it was called hardness of heart. Richard believes that proper appreciation of poetry requires a balanced emotional response by avoiding inhibitions. Our next difficulty is doctrine additions. Doctrine additions means when a reader's personal beliefs, like religious or political belief or ideologies, interfere with the interpretation of poem. If the poem challenges a reader's belief, they may refuse to understand it. According to Richards, these beliefs can lead to biased reading, so it is necessary that readers must remain objective and separate their personal ideologies from literary analysis. The ninth difficulty is technical presuppositions. Technical presuppositions refers to preconceived ideas about the form and nature of poetry, such as beliefs that poetry must rhyme or follow fixed rules. These assumptions limit the reader's understanding and leads to unfair judgments. Richards emphasizes that poetry should be analysis on its own terms and readers must avoid rigid expectations to appreciate different poetic styles. The last difficulty is general critical preconceptions. According to Richards, general critical preconceptions refers to the preconceived ideas and theories that readers bring to a poem before analyzing it. These preconceptions leads to biased interpretation and prevent independent understanding. Richard argues that each poem should be approached without prejudgment and analyzed through close reading. The 10 difficulties identified by Iyer Richards show that reading poetry requires proper training, emotional balance, and freedom from bias. Only through close reading, readers can overcome these obstacles and achieve proper understanding. So, with this, we come to the end of today's video. I hope all of you understand the concepts clearly. In the next video, we will cover the remaining topics. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more such informative videos.